Thank you for that. Lovely to see everybody. Can you all hear me okay? I do have the mic fixed. Okay, lovely. I just wanted to share with you a little bit about a story maybe about career change, because I went through a bit of a career change, and just want to share a bit also the origin of my interest in astronomy, because I think every single one of us has, if not a similar story, something aligned with it, or other people have rather surprising stories, but just wanted to share a little bit of that. First of all, as my last name might have indicated, I am part Finnish. My father's from Finland. I was born in Finland, but I didn't grow up in Finland. I have two sets of grandparents. They both were diplomats, so they were all over the globe. And so shortly after my birth, I spent a lot of time between Canada and India. And then my father himself became a diplomat, and we went to Belgrade in what was then Yugoslavia, so that dates me. From Yugoslavia came the momentous trip, let's say. From Yugoslavia, my father was posted to Brazil. Not just Brazil, but to Brasilia, which is the capital in the center of the country. While there, this was the late 1970s, just so that you can put it in context of light pollution and population and so on. While there, a third cousin of my mother's popped up, we don't know how, and he had bought a fazenda, a ranch. And that ranch was somewhere in the middle here of the Mato Grosso. So you have Brasilia up there. We would drive about 200 kilometers south, what's that, east. And this ranch would be in the absolute middle of nowhere. So you can imagine the skies that we had. Even today, the light pollution is not very prevalent in that area. So you can imagine what it was like almost 50 years ago. So while there at the ranch, one of the guests brought a telescope, and he took it out. And my dad and I spent a lot of time looking at the skies. You know, he'd take me out. He was interested in astronomy. He'd take me out, and he'd show me the constellations. He'd show me the stars. Do you remember, guys, when it was exciting to spot a satellite? Yes. Right? It was a lot of fun then. We'd be there scouring the skies. It was like, oh, I spotted one, I spotted one. So Dad took me out, showed me the constellations, and then one day, this chap called Mario brought his little telescope out. And he pointed it at, of course, Saturn. He invited all the guests to come and peek through the eyepiece, and the guests went there one by one. They looked through the eyepiece, and when it was my turn, I looked through and I didn't see anything. And I was really, really scared to say so, because I thought I was doing something wrong. I was 9, 10 years old. I thought I was, but eventually I said, you know what? I've got to say, there's something really wrong with this. I've been reading my dad's books. I know I should be seeing something. So I told Mario, and he said, well, of course, you know, there was no tracker on this telescope. The Earth had turned in that meantime, and so Saturn was out of the field of view. He readjusted it. I climbed up on the little ladder. That wasn't that night. It was another night. The telescope was situated somewhere. I had a little ladder. And I looked through and I saw Saturn with my own eye for the first time, and I literally fell off that ladder. I literally fell off and had to be picked up. And for me, I'm sure many of you had the same experience. When I'd read my dad's coffee table books and I'd see pictures of Saturn, and when I saw it for the first time myself, it was palpable. It felt like 3D, and it was like so exciting. And after that, I was hooked. But Dad was really, as I've already mentioned, responsible for my interest in astronomy, also because he was a subscriber to Sky and Telescope. And I would leaf through his issues even before I could read. You know, I was there, I was looking at all the pictures, and of course in those days they were kind of grainy black and white, as those of you who were subscribers then might remember, but it was still so exciting. So this is when my dad unpacked a couple of boxes after their last move, and he found all his old issues. So after Brazil, we went back to Europe, and I finished high school, and the time came to go to university. And because all my schools were international schools abroad, so they were either run by Americans or by the Brits, or a combination of both. And my last school I went to was in Rome. I went to British high school, and it was just easiest to go to a university in the UK. So I chose Edinburgh. Not least because I'm a big fan of whiskey and I wanted to be close to the source. So I went to, how many of you have been to Edinburgh? Yeah, it's a great town, isn't it? It's a great town. It's beautiful. Absolutely love Edinburgh. So here's a map of Edinburgh. So those of you who have been, but many of you have also seen photos, there's Edinburgh Castle, which is absolutely glorious, Holyrood Palace, which is now the seat of the Scottish Parliament. And there's the, downtown Edinburgh, where the old university is. The old university is there in downtown Edinburgh. The thing that they did was they kept all the cool kids, all the humanities and all the philosophers and all of that up there in the center of town. And they moved all the scientists down to King's Buildings down here. And King's Buildings is a completely modern affair. It's, it's all these modern buildings. And I was like, I loved being in downtown Edinburgh. It's so wonderful to be there with the gray stone and everything. But I was like, okay, because there was a little perk. The physics building is the James Clerk Maxwell building, and that's where I studied physics, astronomy, and I think we did the math lectures there as well. Guess who wandered the halls of Edinburgh University in the 1970s and onwards for several decades, or from the 60s onwards? Can anybody guess? Nobel Prize winner? No? Paul Higgs. Higgs was a professor there at the time. He was a wee chap, lovely, very shy. He'd stop and talk to all the students. It was absolutely lovely. You'd be walking down a corridor and Professor Higgs would just stop and say, "Oh, and what are you doing today, young lady?" And so absolutely delightful. So we were relegated to the outskirts of Edinburgh, but we were also close to Blackford Hill, which is the site of the Royal Observatory of Scotland. And that's where I did a lot of my exercises, lab exercises. We climbed the hill, do a couple of exercises, come back down. We were also allowed to use some of the telescopes up there. So I finished my undergraduate studies, and then comes the big question. What do I do next? I didn't have the best advisor, and I didn't have a lot of guidance, and which it's the way it went. But I had two competing desires in me, what I wanted to do. One of them was, at the time, I did want to do science writing, science communication, but I was also very drawn to research. And I thought, which of these two will I do? As my advisor had not pushed me on a path forward, I was thinking, okay, what can I do? Well, what I can do is focus on research, because that will take me back to Finland. It's an opportunity for me to go back to Finland and explore my Finnish roots that I didn't know of. So I applied to the University of Helsinki, and it took a while, of course, because I was late by then with the application, but I got admitted to do a master's program. And this was, at the time, the University of Helsinki had a Department of Astronomy. And the Department of Astronomy was situated at the old Helsinki University Observatory. And that observatory was established in 1834. Now, the premier observatory in Finland until that time was in the city of Turku, which is in southeastern Finland. Turku used to be the capital of Finland until 16-something, when it shifted over to Helsinki. But Helsinki was really only an administrative capital. At the time, everything that was important stayed in Turku, all the academics, everything that was important. So the main Department of Astronomy, the main observatory of Finland of the time, was still in Turku. There was a big fire in Turku in the early 1800s. And this is actually recorded. The astronomer of the time, Wilhelm Friedrich Argelander, some of you might know the name, he was observing on the night of the big fire in Turku. And his logbook actually, this is ad lib here, his logbook actually, in his logbook, he writes down his frustration that the light from the fire was interrupting his observing. And it's written there in the logbooks. So the whole town burns down, or much of the town burns down, so they decide to move the observatory. They move it to Helsinki. And here in the tower, here in the garden, that houses the double refractor. And that's a double, each lens is a third of 13 inches. And that double refractor was used to do the Carte du Ciel, if some of you know the big project that was led by, I forgot who, in the late 1800s. And I think Helsinki University was the only branch that actually completed their job. But anyway, that beautiful instrument is housed in the tower in the back. We just have picnics there in the back and everything. It was really nice. Now, contrary to Edinburgh, Helsinki University is smack downtown, or the observatory is smack downtown, is the X there. There's the harbor of Helsinki, downtown Helsinki. But think, in the 1800s, that was rural land. Downtown Helsinki was very small, so where the red X is, that was a good enough place for them to do important observations. So eventually I completed my master's, I completed my PhD, and I set off to do some research. And that research involved Australia. I had met through a series of steps a lovely man, Professor Richard Hunstead from the University of Sydney, and he had invited me to come down to work. Oh, this was still during my PhD days. Sorry, this was just the last year of my PhD. So he invited me to come down to use this, or to analyze, reduce and analyze the data from this wonderful instrument. It's the Molonglo Observatory Synthesis Telescope. It's outside of Canberra, the capital of Australia. It's almost a kilometer long. And Professor Hunstead had lots of data that he needed a student or somebody or an early researcher to reduce. So I was able to do that. And in Australia, when you need to mow the lawn, you don't take the lawnmowers out, but you take the sheep out. So this was my first proper article. The first data that I reduced and analyzed from the Molonglo, which is called MOST, fondly called MOST telescope, was radio data of an X-ray binary called GX339-4. Now, an X-ray binary, if you don't remember, is an object. It's a double star where one of the stars is a compact object, either a black hole or a neutron star, and the companion is a Roche lobe-filling regular star, and the black hole or neutron star, the compact object, accretes matter from the companion star. And that matter swirls around in an accretion disk that heats up and emits X-rays. And from time to time, the accretion disk goes unstable and it emits jets of matter that radiate in the radio. Now, what does this remind you of? It reminds you probably of AGN, quasars, right? Quasars have a supermassive black hole at the core of galaxies. They accrete matter from the host galaxy and then spew it out at relativistic speeds. The difference is the scale. Supermassive black holes are millions to billions times the mass of the sun. Stellar mass black holes are 7, 10, 20 times the mass of the sun. But otherwise, the physical phenomena are the same. It's just the time scales on which they happen. So X-ray binaries are wonderful labs for studying the phenomena of accretion and ejection. And so we published this paper where I had analyzed the radio data, but I'd been dabbling a lot in X-ray astronomy. And so I knew there were a lot of instruments or missions at the time that published all their data in public archives. So anybody could go and grab what we call soft X-ray data, the Rossi X-ray Timing Explorer. You might have heard of that mission, phenomenal. They put almost all of their data online for public use, except for proprietary data, which was from a different program. And then there was also the Compton Gamma Ray Observatory, the BATSI, the Burst and Transit Source Experiment. And so that particular instrument, the mission team would publish all of the data online. You could grab it. So I was thinking, oh, GX339-4, the GX signifies that it was discovered with an X-ray mission. In fact, I think it was the Granat. No, it was not that one. It's another one. Anyway, I can't remember. But the GX told me that it was an X-ray, discovered in X-rays. So that meant there must be X-ray data on it. So I looked through the archives, and I found what we call soft X-rays, which is a sort of 2 to 10 keV range, and hard X-rays, which is a sort of 20 to 100 keV. The thing to realize here is that the radio comes from the jets and the X-ray comes from the disk. And what we saw was that there was a flare in the radio simultaneous to the soft and hard X-rays. And that meant that there was a connection between the accretion disk and the subsequent ejection of the radio jets. And nobody had really looked at this before. People were studying accretion disks, people were studying radio jets, people were studying the hot corona around, but nobody had put together, maybe there's something happening with the accretion disk that causes the jets. And so this was the first time that the radio X-ray correlation was found, let's say, for a source. So people much more clever than I took this idea and applied it to a whole bunch of other what we call microquasars, so X-ray binaries with radio jets. Every one of those colored dots is a different source, and they all follow a fairly tight correlation line. But what's really cool is that we have the microquasars down there, and other researchers were able to extend that X-ray correlation right up to the AGNs. So we go from stellar mass right up to supermassive black holes, and they all follow a fairly tight radio X-ray correlation. And that meant that researchers could really start developing more sophisticated models to describe what happens with accretion disks and what happens really close to the black hole, and how maybe these jets can be ejected at such at such high velocities. So that was a lot of fun. But what was more fun was the fact that I could go to Australia. And I got to go about once a year. Now remember, I was in Finland at this time. January, Finland, office, snow. That is snow. Okay, my office was on the ground floor, and that was a bit of a snowdrift, but still, I came in one morning and this was the view that greeted me. Professor Hunstead invites me to Australia.
And in Cambridge now, right?
And, sorry?
And the same thing in Cambridge now.
You're absolutely right. I don't learn, do I? So I get on a plane, and 2 days later, who's been to Australia? It's a long ways away, isn't it? So 2 days later, anyway, I'd arrive, and this would be the scene that would greet me, So guess where I was happiest in January? And the fun thing about Australia as well is the various animals that we have there. So this is my beloved mentor, Professor Hunstead. He's no longer with us. But every time I go, I'd stay with him and his delightful wife, Penny. And we would have the rainbow lorikeets. They'd come and visit us, and they'd sit in the salad bowls. And my favorites, the sulfur-crested cockatoos. And then we had a little possum that would come and visit us in the evenings, and she'd like to climb the screen door, and she loved apples. And then this is something here in Florida, the blue bottles, right? The Portuguese man of war. They were everywhere on the beaches there. And so you've all heard the adage that in Australia there's so many things that are trying to kill you. That's one of them. The other one, you can't see it very well here, but Sydney, the area outside of Sydney, it's very rocky. And so they have a lot of rock pools. And Penny, Richard, and I would go, you find all sorts of neat things inside rock pools. So everybody's always sticking their hands inside rock pools, pulling out all this exciting stuff, because the surf would come, deposit stuff, and then wash back. You can't see it very well, but there's the tentacle of a blue-ringed octopus in there, which is, I think, one of the most venomous. And we had just stuck our hands in there, and Richard fished out something or the other. Then, this was at in one observing session. Again, you can't see it too well because this was days before the iPhone cameras, and I didn't go too close, but there's a brown snake in the grass there. And this was on the way to between the control room of the Australia Telescope Compact Array and one of the antennae, and we had to go and check the detector. So it's all curled up there, but it's a brown snake. The name sounds very innocuous, but I think it's the second or third most venomous snake on the planet. And then, of course, delightful spiders all over. You have the black widow, not black widow. Black widow, no. The redback spider, the redback. And that is I think the most venomous spider in Australia, and it's not even the size of your pinky fingernail. So they're really hard to find. This guy is friendly, and he's nice and big and fuzzy, but, and of course Australia has a lot of kangaroos, so keep an eye on this little video, not mine, but we would see scenes like this every day. That's the compact array, and there were kangaroos absolutely everywhere. So after I published that first paper, I got involved in quite a few different branches of research. I continued with the microquasars and their jet ejections. I also looked into pair-annihilation from a galactic center source, and just a bunch of, got into globular clusters, and that's why I love looking at globular clusters when I'm out with a telescope or a binoculars. Looked at infrared. One of the fun things about doing professional astronomy, research astronomy also, is that you can end up with big collaborations, and it's a lot of fun to work with a lot of different people who all have different skills, and they all provide something, they all bring something to the project. And it's incredibly satisfying to lead a team of, I don't know how many there are there, spread all over the world. And that also means one can be very efficient, because when you have colleagues in Australia, Europe, and the US, you cover 24 hours. Your colleague in Australia can start something, the Europeans pick it up, and the Americans finish it off. So in 24 hours, you could do like 3 times the work almost. So that was one of the fun things about research astronomy, was working with big research groups. And so these are just the various topics. Then I started supervising some PhD students, Linnea Hjalmarsdottir and Kari Koljonen. They focused on Cygnus X3. I don't know if you've looked into Cygnus X3 at all at any time, but it's a fascinating target. It's supposedly an X-ray binary, but nobody really knows what the compact object is, what the companion is, but it does wacky things in the X-rays and radio. And so SIG X3 is cool, and GX9+9 was a neutron star. So this was all a mixture of X-ray and gamma ray and radio. So that was a lot of fun. And I did the usual thing that researchers do. You apply for observing time, you don't get any, so you have to think, what am I going to do? Or you get, 1 hour in one of the big telescopes and you're clouded out. You analyze data, supervise students, and all the stuff that researchers do. But then we had another change in life. My father-in-law got a little bit frail and ill, and we thought, okay, I wasn't really finding a niche in Finland. It's a very small country. There were only 4 departments of astronomy at the time. Now they're down to 3 in a whole country. And I was just, getting restless. As you saw, my early life, it was every 2-3 years we packed our bags and went somewhere. And I'd been in Finland for 8 years in a row, and it was like, ugh, I gotta go somewhere else. And guess what? My father-in-law lived here in Florida. So I came down to the West Palm area, and I joined the Astronomical Society of the Palm Beaches. Anybody here from that club? No. I joined that club, and we all know light pollution in Florida, right, Mario? And so one thing that I did while there, I was teaching at a small school. I was doing a bit of this and that, but I needed to keep busy. So I offered to write the newsletter for the club. So I did that for a while, had a lot of fun. But then, Florida's a lot of fun as well. It also has neat wildlife, alligators, and I love the anhinga, absolutely one of my favorite birds. And of course, there's the Florida panther. I hope there are some left. The last time I was here, we were down to like 10. And cypress forest, I loved wandering the cypress forest and loved spotting the roseate spoonbill and all of that. I was having such a good time. And every time I had guests, I dragged them up to the Kennedy Space Center, no matter whether they were interested or not. They had to come. So I spent so many days up there. We went up there. But after a while, life is good in Florida. You get to float around, have a drink in a floaty thing and read whatever you want. But it was like, okay, time. We got to do the job search now. Can't go on playing tennis and sitting in the pool all day long. So I looked, and I looked online, and I saw there was an ad for observing editor at Sky and Telescope. And I thought, okay, I know Sky and Telescope. Let's see what happens. So I applied, and I, to my great surprise, was hired. And I started on August 7th, 2017. What does August 2017 remind you all of?
Eclipse.
And it was on the 21st, right? So I started on the 7th of August. About 10 days later, the office cleared out. Everybody left to go look at the eclipse, and I was left alone with, I think, 2 people. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. So that was the start. And I took over, let me just run by briefly the origins of the magazine. I bet most of you know the story better than I do, but I think it's a cute story. So in the early 1930s, there was a magazine called The Telescope, and it was founded in 1931, and it was dedicated to popular articles on research by professional astronomers. In 1934, they moved the whole operation to Harvard College Observatory. There was also a magazine called The Sky, and that was more dedicated to the amateur side of things. And its tagline was the magazine of cosmic news. And then in 1941, Charles Federer merged the two, and no surprise, he called it Sky and Telescope. And it was based in Harvard College Observatory. I think it took over from the premises of where the telescope was. And Sky and Tel has been in Cambridge ever since then. We've had 4 or 5 different offices, but we've been in Cambridge ever since then. And in the first decades, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, it all had the same sort of cover, you know, black and white, with the same sort of format. October 1966 was the first color cover. And that came in 1966, and after that there were several more color covers, and then design changes came in the 80s, 90s. And in November 2021, we had our 80th issue. And most excitingly, last February, we had our 1000th issue. And we haven't missed a single issue since November 1941. And I hope we keep it that way. So my department was observing, what we in-house call observing. And so I was I wrote Sky at a Glance. I still do, by the way. So wrote Sky at a Glance. I would work with Matt Waddell on binocular highlight, look at the sky chart, do lunar almanac, all of this stuff in the middle of in the center of the magazine. And I had a lot of fun doing that. We have, of course, the Sun, Moon, and Planets column that nowadays Gary Saronic is writing. I'm sure you've seen that. And Celestial Calendar that our fabulous blogger and contributing editor Bob King writes. And so it was a lot of fun. I worked on this, not just myself, but also with Gary Saronic at the time. And we featured all sorts of fun, you know, observing articles on the cover. And most of our observing articles, as you probably know, follow a bit the same pattern. We try to feature a star chart. Sometimes it's not very easy, but we try to feature a star chart, a table of coordinates so that you can plug them into your go-to if you want, and then some artwork to support the narrative. I also edit Going Deep, which is a lot of fun because that is for people like Mario who have massive telescopes. So they're mostly for the 18-inch and up. 18-inch, 24-inch, 30-inch, and Going Deep is a little bit shorter. It's 3 pages, but again, table of data and so on. And then we also have Suburban Stargazer, which is a column I like very much because it's Ken Hewitt-White who writes it, and it's focused on people in mostly light polluted areas. And I think he's managed to bring astronomy to people who can't access dark sky sites. And so I think it's a fabulous column. And this is a column that I started, I think it's about 4 years ago by now. I know that Sky and Telescope had done this before. They were looking at the connections between professionals and amateurs, but it had been a while since we'd done it. And so I introduced this in 21, way back, you know, when I was observing editor. And so I tried to cover a whole bunch of topics of where either an amateur has done work with a professional or has provided data to a research group and they've published it, or a research group that needs the help of amateurs, you know, people with backyard scopes and time and clear skies. And I've had a lot of fun writing this column. Last year, I let a few months drop, but that was, had a few other things to do. So in November 2024, in the October 2024, Peter Tyson, my predecessor, retired, and I stepped into the role in November 2024. And it's an incredible honor to succeed this line of people who have brought Sky and Telescope since 1941 forward. And so in this new role, I cannot focus only on observing, and of course we've had to hire somebody to replace me and everything, but in this new role I get to check everything out, which is really cool. So I get to work with our science editor on the science stories. Of course, she does all the heavy lifting, but I get involved in various ways. And I love our science stories that cover, all manner from planetary exploration to black holes to stars to groups of galaxies, and that's about the James Webb Space Telescope. And then, of course, we also do astrophotography and all sorts of other fun stuff for gearheads. I absolutely love these articles. I have to proof everything nowadays, and I'm learning a lot about screws and things like that I never thought I would have to know, and it's a lot of fun. And this is a department that's very close to my heart, and that is a department that covers the historical and the community side of astronomy. And I absolutely love this, and what I'd like to start developing a bit more is the community side, because that has Gary, who was commissioning these feature articles, he loved the history side, so he focused on that. And I love that everybody loves the history articles, but I would also, since we only have the one department that has to take everything, I'd also like to see more on planetariums and maybe dark sky sites or dark sky projects and things like that. So hopefully we'll start seeing a bit more of that, but still with the historical and biographical, because I love them. And then we have the various columns that you all probably know quite well. The news notes, gallery. Has anybody submitted photos to gallery? Yes, of course. Yes, you do. Of course. And at the start of this year, I don't know, some of you who might be longer term subscribers, do you remember a department called Images? It ran for maybe 10 years, sort of mid-90s to mid-2000s, and it was a spread where there was a big photo and then an elongated caption written by, I think it started out written by one of the editors, but then they commissioned it out to contributing editors. And we'd been talking for quite a while that it would be fun to bring that back, and so we did. The only thing is we're calling it something slightly different. We're calling it Beautiful Universe, so as of the January issue this year, this will appear. And the aim is to have all of the in-house editors write a column a month and give their own take on either the object or a subject or a topic or just what they see in a photo or what they've observed or whatever it is. And so it's to bring the readers a little piece of ourselves and how we see the sky and how we see astronomy. And so I'm looking forward to see how that develops. And I thought you might like to meet us. We're not a very big staff. Once upon a time, when everything was done in-house, including marketing and printing and all of that, the staff they were in the 50, 60, 70, I don't know how many they were. There were many, many people. We are much fewer now. But some of you may, because I think it is announced in the April issue, which is already out. Some of you might have it. But we've had some changes on staff. And one of them is Sean Walker has now been promoted to senior editor. He's been associate editor for now. He's now promoted to senior editor. And Edwin Aguirre was an editor way back from the mid-90s to mid-2000s. Some of you might know his name. So he was hired to replace me. And Gary Saronic has now retired. And so we have a new editor who started in December, Meg Thatcher, and she is don't call her Margaret, okay? Don't call her Margaret. She insists on being called Meg. She started in really full-time at the start of this year, and you will see her signature in several things because she's quite phenomenal. And our creative team is led by Terry Dubé, and we have technical illustrator Bea and illustrator Leah Tichon. But we cannot do this work on our own. We have a fleet of incredibly talented contributing editors, of whom some are in this room, and incredibly talented contributors who are also in this room. And thank you to all of you who help, us bring material to the reader. And so here we are. This is us. So that's at our last holiday party. There's me, there's Meg, she's the new one. Monica Young, she curates the news and the website. So you will see her name on the website all over the place. There's Sean Walker. I think many of you know Sean. Kelly Beattie is retired, so he's senior contributing editor, but he still does a heck of a lot with us, and it's great to see him. There's Edwin, Terry, our creative director, Bea, our technical illustrator, Sabrina. We can't live without her. She's our editorial assistant. She does everything in the office and is doing some editing. And Camille Carlisle, you'll know as well, as our science editor. So this past year has been a lot of fun. We've covered a lot of topics, and some of the things that I've really enjoyed working on was we did a special issue in July. And this is, I think, the first cover that we have created fully in-house. We used our graphics illustrator, and she came up with this cover, which I think is incredibly whimsical. And we have a lot of stories in there dedicated to outreach, something that is very dear to my heart. And I absolutely loved working on that issue. And then in December, we have another conceptual cover that was designed by our creative director and put together by Bea. And it's been a lot of fun to try slightly different things with the cover. But otherwise, we also have the regular fantastic photos of the sun. This moonshot is glorious. And so working on the cover is another thing that I've discovered is quite a lot of fun. We also have a website. I hope some of you have been able to access that website where we have, besides the news stories, we also have tools and a lot of stuff for beginning astronomy. So if you have friends who want to get into astronomy, you can point them to our website. And of course, we have a presence on Facebook, Blue Sky, Instagram, YouTube. As I mentioned, outreach is very important to me. And I've done a fair bit over the years. Who goes to NEAF? Yeah, come and say hello. We'll be there again. Come and say hello. It's a lot of fun to always be at NEAF. And star parties, of course, are incredibly fun, right? And I've been to quite a few, including here in 2020, and I wrote it up, a brief little story there. So I hope that next time, if I give a talk like this again, well, I usually use this star party slide. I hope that there'll be an updated photo of me at this star party, so I could totally advertise that as well. Okay, so how about writing for Sky and Telescope? Who has written for Sky and Telescope here? Yes, some of you have, yes. But you know what? If you have an idea, get in touch. We love working with new authors and returning authors. And we have instructions on our website about how to submit a manuscript. And the important thing is you're not alone doing this. You're working with us. We help you. We support you along the way. So don't think you have to do everything, The important thing is create a manuscript that is in pretty good shape, and we'll help you in the process. We can help you with formatting the tables, preparing a star chart, looking for artwork, working with you on the actual edit. It doesn't have to be a perfect piece that you give us. Of course, the better it is, the better. But if you have ideas, do send them in, because we love hearing from all of you. And so we have reached the end now. I just want to thank you all. I want to let you know that there are some cards here up front. Come and grab one, because on the back is a QR code. Not necessarily just for subscriptions and so on, but it'll bring you to a landing page for, maybe some info that you can, hand these out to your friends who want to get into astronomy and so on. Like I said, they can go to the website and maybe start exploring some of the tools, some of the beginner stuff. And so grab a card. And of course, I hope everybody puts a sticker on their laptop. So come and grab a sticker as well. So thank you very much. I am here for any questions if there are any. Yes?
You want to talk about your relationship with WAS?
Yes, absolutely. That was on a slide and I completely glossed over it. Yes. Some of you may remember that in March 2019, our parent company, F&W Media, went bankrupt. And thankfully, the American Astronomical Society came in and bought us in June 2019. So we have been a part of the AAS since then. And they were very interested in purchasing us because just a couple of years prior to 2019, sometime in the mid-2010s, they were investigating inroads into the amateur community. They were very interested in connecting with the amateur community. And so when Sky Telescope was up for grabs, they thought, well, this is perfect. You know, we'll just we'll try and reach the community through that. And so since June 2019, we've been part of the AAS, and so we attend their winter meetings and so on. Yeah, thank you. And we're doing some. We're getting back into some of the book publishing, and some of the books that Sky Publishing used to do, and so the AAS is taking that over. And so we're in a bit of a unsettled moment at the moment because Kevin Marvel, a long-term executive director of the AAS, resigned last November, and he's gone on to do something else. And so they're searching for somebody new, but they said the search could take 8 to 12 months. And so we have to sit tight for a while before projects can take off. But the books is something I'm very interested in seeing developed as well.
Talk a little about the tours. You know.
Yes, of course. That is among the things that we do. I thought I was running so late, sorry. Among the things that we do are tours. How many of you have been on a Sky and Telescope tour? Fantastic, yeah. So we do astronomical themed tours, of course, and that's Kelly Beattie who organizes them primarily. And they're a lot of fun. Big ones are going to be 2027 for the eclipse in Egypt. And I myself am going next month to Hawaii, and that's a lovely tour as well because we get to go up to the summit. There's a Canaries tour. Oh, I wonder, there should be a Canaries tour. There's a tour to the Galapagos for an annular eclipse. No, that's a total. I can't remember. It's all there under the tours tab. And it's a lot of fun because everybody gets to know one another really well, and we get to do a lot of fun astronomical things together. Gary Saronic runs the annual Iceland Aurora tour. And so, thank you. What else have I forgotten? Mario.
Yeah, I think it's great that the AAS took it over because I commiserated with Peter Tyson for
Yes.
a couple of years about the dire finances.
Yeah.
And that would have been a shame if it went under. But it's also important for the AAS to have an outreach. Otherwise, because that inspires future people to go into the AAS. So I think it's a symbiotic relationship, and it's really important, especially for pro-am collaboration. Are the finances now stable? Is Sky and Telescope stable going forward?
I am not very familiar with the final numbers, you know, when they come through, because they're being a bit, they want to try to keep, as you know, they want to try to keep the business side separate from the editorial. And, but one thing we do know, so this is why grab a card, give it to everybody. We need subscribers. That's a fact. We need subscribers.
Okay, subscription stable? Dropping?
Not really. Dropping a bit, but they're also dropping because unfortunately we've had technical issues with our customer service, as some of you know too well. And so this is something, and we have had a bit of, you know, frustration from people. And I want you all to know that if you encounter any problems, just send me an email. I can't do anything about it, but what I can do is forward it directly to the person who can do something about it. We've had ongoing issues, and it's just a question of, I think, communication. They took on, the AAS took on a lot when they took us on, and it's taking a while. It's getting better, but it's taken a while for all of that to smooth over. But we should reach a point soon where there shouldn't be any hitches, but if there are, just don't hesitate to email. Just tell me, I've encountered a problem. And like I said, I can't fix it, but I can forward it to somebody who might be able to. But yes, we need subscribers. We need subscribers. So tell everybody, grab a handful of cards, tell everybody. And nowadays, the website is behind a paywall, as some of you have probably noticed. If you are already a subscriber, you get access to all the content. If you're not, after 3 articles, you have to pay a subscription fee, but that is, there was an introductory fee of $29 a year. I think maybe now it's gone up to $35, but that gives you access to all of the digital editions as well, not just the website, but the full I can't say it, the electronic stuff. Thank you, Mario. Anybody else? Who saw the moon and Mercury last night?
Oh, yeah.
That was cool, wasn't it? And tonight I think we should have Saturn nearby. I think
We saw Saturn last night.
Saturn last night.
Yeah, they'll be near the moon tonight.
I wrote about it. I wrote about it right there. 19th, dusk. Above the west-southwestern horizon, you'll see Saturn 3 3/4 lower left of the waxing crescent moon. So let's see if I got it right. All right, thank you very much.